Kawtar Benhalima is in the building.
Hey.
Kawtar, welcome. Marhaba to Instinct Urbain, the podcast that understands that city doesn't wait. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
It feels so great to see you, especially here in Paris, especially here in this place, l'Institut du Monde Arabe.
Yes.
And by the way, thank you to the team led by Jack Long for receiving us today. And Kawtar, and for those who are watching this show for the first time, basically what we're doing here is that we explore how city impacts the way we behave, the way we act, and the way we live in cities. So, let's talk about you.
Let's go.
Kawtar, you are Miss Universe Morocco, you're an artist, you're a businesswoman, you're also a citizen of the world, and you're also a great friend of mine, and so thank you for being here.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Yes, we have attended business school together.
Exactly.
So
here in Paris.
Here in Paris, exactly.
At ESSEC, exactly.
At ESSEC. So it's really exciting to be here a few years later speaking about what I think is such a relevant topic. Yeah.
And so before diving in the discussion, our previous guest has a gift for you. So basically it's named the question of the guest. So we have received a comedian called Jonathan Denel, and we asked him to ask you a question about what we have talked together back then. So let me read that question for you.
Let's do it.
I know you can answer it because you have lived in Paris.
Okay.
So, who are the worst drivers in Paris?
Who are the worst drivers? Well, I don't know if it's the drivers or if it's the pedestrians that are the problem in this situation, but this is such a sad story, but unfortunately, just recently, literally a week ago, there was an accident in Paris that happened that had to do with a bus, and it wasn't the first time. So based on that experience, I would say bus drivers, maybe. My experience with Uber drivers and cab drivers has been very positive. I haven't hopped on a motorcycle yet in Paris, but that's
so
my
buses.
answer. Buses.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about cities. Last week, on March 8th, it was the International Women's Day, and this day was very particular and historic in France because France is now the first country in the world to protect abortion in its own constitution.
Yes.
And so with you, I really want to talk about the place of women in the society in general, and more than that, talking about women in cities and trying to answer that question, how to build cities for women. Are you ready?
Oh yes, a big question, a big task, but let's get into it.
So, women. I know you have lived in several countries, several cities. You grew up in Morocco, you moved to Paris, then Singapore, then you've been to Barcelona, and now you are living in Montreal, Canada. So, with all that experiences, what does it mean for you to be a woman in today's world?
Yes, it's interesting because more than being an Arab woman that grew up in Morocco, I am also an Arab woman that is part of a postmodern culture and society that grew up in a very multicultural world that also has technology at the core of it. So the notion of barriers has very quickly dissolved. And in my experiences with the people that I meet, with the generation that I'm a part of, it seems that we're all living in a world that is constantly reshaping what it means to be a person with a certain identity or culture. And it's been very interesting to try to explore identity formation within my own experience as I've lived in different countries. In Morocco, it's important to say that also I come from a very privileged background. I speak a few languages, and so that has fundamentally shaped my experience of Morocco, whether that be through the eyes of people that live there or how I experience that reality along with the world.
So does it mean that you are acting differently according to where you are in the world?
I think on a subconscious level, it's maybe that I'm adapting to a certain environment, which would mean that maybe there are certain modes of my personality that are developed, changed, and commodified in certain ways. And I think that in the same way the environment shapes me, so it's a constant exchange.
Okay. And so what are the main differences you have noticed between those cities? If you are in Singapore, if you're in Marrakech, or if you're in Montreal, it's not going to be the same norms, the same culture.
Yes, based on the history, based on the norms, based on the culture that are tied into all of this, and with all of this, a woman is treated a certain way, which has been very interesting for me because I do see myself as an explorer in a lot of ways. And in Montreal, I see the ways in which women are, there's a feminist discourse that is very, very pushed, especially in the school that I'm at, which is Concordia, which I think is very interesting because it also has an effect on how men treat women. And there's even the idea of gender that is constantly dismantled. And in that way, the perception of who you are is challenged. And then in Morocco, growing up with these very well articulated notions of what it means to be a man or a woman, you are also treated differently in that milieu. So it's constantly shifting, it's constantly transforming, and I find that very fascinating. And
you're talking about exploring. The thing is, when you explore the world like you do, you need to be safe. So let's talk about safety. About 1 in 3 women worldwide have experienced physical or sexual abuse in their lifetime. In other words, and to be more specific, every 68 seconds, an American is sexually assaulted. So that means that safety is an important issue, an important topic to talk about, especially for women. And so, have you ever been a witness of those kind of acts?
Unfortunately, yes. I have been a witness of these kinds of acts. I've also been a witness of the other side of it, which is a man being harassed. That was in Singapore, which I think was very interesting to me because I saw that certain power dynamics were very different in that culture. Whereas in Morocco, this is all based on my personal experience, of course, there was a recurrent pattern of hearing about women that are constantly in danger, and that abuse being normalized to a certain extent. So it's interesting to see that in Morocco, a woman that is in danger may not even know that she is in danger because the culture does not recognize that as being something to be wary of. Once again, this is very contextual, but unfortunately, yes, this is a reality that I've seen, that I've heard about, and that is very real.
Which was the safest place you've been in?
I want to say Singapore felt very
Why?
safe. Everything felt very regulated there.
Was it too much? Death penalty, like all that stuff? Does it encourage to act normally?
It definitely made me feel safe. I think that having such strong and strict regulations does have an upside where there's kind of like a certainty of security that you're guaranteed. So it was comforting, and when roaming the streets of Singapore, I did feel, even at night, I did feel a sense of safety.
What about Paris? Do you feel safe in Paris?
It depends on which arrondissement I'm in, at what time, and all that. I want to say that, you know, we attended ESSEC, and I, at that time, lived at the Résidence du Port, which is the students' residence located in Cergy, which was not a safe place at all. We constantly had updates on our mutual Facebook group that notified us if there was a group of people that we had to be wary of that carried a weapon of some sort. My phone has been stolen in Paris. My mother's phone has been stolen in Paris. So in terms of safety, I must say that I'm constantly on the lookout of my purse, of myself at night. I have witnessed an unfortunate event last February in Paris as well, where there was some violence and some blood. And so these kinds of things, they leave an impression on you.
So you need to be aware of your surroundings all the time. Okay.
Like hyper-vigilant almost. But what can you expect? Paris is a big city. Just like any other big city, I think you confront these issues.
Yeah.
So Paris, New York, I would imagine London as well, and Barcelona as well.
Okay. And so to understand, because I'm a man, I'm quite tall, I know how to defend myself. And so I don't have particular issues walking down the streets. And so for you as a woman, are you avoiding places in the streets by night?
What I did notice, something I developed is we all wear our headphones in the city, right? We're all wearing headphones, listening to music and all that, but I noticed that at a certain time, when I'm taking public transports, I do not wear my headphones just so I can be aware of the sounds around me. So that is like a safety measure I have developed wherever I am in the world. I do this in Montreal, I do this in Paris.
Even in Montreal?
Even in Montreal.
Even during the day?
During the day, I will say less than during the night, but I have developed that reflex, I would say.
And so through that, I want to talk about female sections. We have noticed in Singapore, there is like those female sections, so those are spaces dedicated to women only. So basically, so in the metro, there is like sections reserved for women. At the gym, there is also like specific spaces where only women can go. What do you think about that?
In Morocco, we also have that. I think that is deeply ingrained in like the culture. I would like to associate that with a certain way that maybe religion is adopted. This is a very delicate subject. I'm not a historian. I do not have enough knowledge about this, but in my opinion, I think that maybe there may be something linked to Islam, as in Singapore there is a very prominent Muslim community as well, and maybe in respect to the two genders, they've applied that kind of
but like approach. That, I don't know, but like for me, maybe it demonstrates that there is an issue in this specific subject about gender equality and all that stuff. And so for you, is it a sustainable way to achieve peace in cities and safety?
I think it takes time to change people's mentalities. It takes time to progress forward. I think that it can be, the intention is right. It's to have women feel more safe in certain circumstances because, well, they've been harassed. Unfortunately, there's a substrate of men that also fetishize women in a very, unhealthy way. And so in that way, maybe what is trying to be achieved is to kind of set aside the voyeuristic side of things. But the question that you've raised is that really solving the issue? Is that amplifying it? I think it's great that there's an intention to provide a safe space for women, but maybe that's just a transition. Maybe this is just what is needed right now whilst more change occurs. Because,
like for me, I have the feeling that it emphasizes it. So the thing is, when I go to the gym, there is that female section. And so when a woman comes out from that section, basically like every woman look at her because they are not used to see women anymore. So like for me, like there is also downtime for it.
That is very interesting. At the end of the day, it would be lovely for us to be at the gym together and just enjoy being in that space and flexing our muscles,
Okay. About muscles. I know you're an artist. I know you love to think. So let's talk about self-expression. how can cities can shape the way we express ourselves and the way we express our personalities. So basically, I have noticed that when you lived in Barcelona, you've made like so much music materials living in there. Is it because of the vibe of the city?
It's a mixture of things. It's the vibe. It's also COVID that happened during that time, which meant that I had to find creative ways of using my time, and I had a lot of time on my hands.
Okay.
So I took that as an opportunity. But it is true that the environment is really inspiring there. There's something about the sunshine and the openness of people, and how there's a kind of change in temporality in Barcelona that allows you to take time. Things feel much slower there, whereas in Paris, things feel very, very dynamic.
Okay.
So it's much more fast-paced. It's really a different sense of time you have there. So it could have definitely participated in that, yes.
Okay. And so basically, so you are currently living in Montreal. And so how do cultural diversity and social interaction in this city, how can it nourish your artistic side of your personality? For example, in Montreal, people speak 2 languages, French and English. And so how can it help you?
It helps me a lot. It challenges me and it helps me. I think it helps me because it challenges me for the most part. So Montreal, I find to be a very hybrid city. This is the way I've come to adopt it in my own terms, because you can interact with people in French and in English. It feels as though inclusivity is at the tip of your tongue. And that's very exciting for me as somebody that has constantly been switching environments and switching languages. So being in a space where, for example, in France, I speak in French most of the time to interact with waiters, drivers, just, you know, in the mundane kind of life. Whereas the mundane in Montreal is switching between English and French, as you please.
Okay.
So that's really, really exciting for me, and it feels as though that kind of diverse way of living is really part of the richness of Montreal. It is something that is appreciated and respected, very respected, and so I find it to be very inspiring.
And so, are you working on a project right now in Montreal?
I'm currently pursuing a diploma in communications, which has to do with film production, sound production, and a little bit of academia. I am definitely still settling in, but very excited to collaborate with artists in the future in Montreal and maybe even New York. That's really close to Montreal. I am currently working on a song that I hope to be released by this summer, and yeah, there's a little something else in the making, but it's so new. It's just a little seed that's been planted.
And so basically you are taking the best of each world, like Singapore, Barcelona, a little bit of Paris, a huge bit of Marrakech, and all that you mix it in there.
Yeah, I try to. It's part of me at this point. I love it. I see that in Montreal I'm overdressed most of the time thanks to what I've picked up from Paris, like a sense of fashion that's really, it doesn't have the same kind of significance there. So it's interesting to see the shifts and what you pick up and what you preserve and all that from different cultures.
Perfect. Since the beginning of the episode, I am the one asking you a question, but maybe you have come like with something to say, a project you want to promote or whatever. So let's do the Autobahn. I don't know if you know what is it.
No, I don't.
Okay, so basically the Autobahn is this German network of highways without speed limits. And so based on that image, we are giving you 2 minutes of free speech.
Ooh, I love that concept so much.
You ready?
So right now in my life, I'm at a crossroads, and what I'd like to promote is really the sense of resilience that people can adopt. I think more than ever now is a time that is very delicate for our generation, where we feel like uncertainty is constantly looming over us because the world we live in is moving at a very rapid pace with technological advancements that are being made and us not really knowing how to set foot in our professional communities with all these changes happening. And with certain political conditions also having an effect on us mentally and on people's experiences of the world, I think having a sense of resilience is important. And I think that in that resilience, having hope could be very necessary for us more than ever. The hope that better things are coming, the hope that we can actually make a change, the hope that we can believe in one another and trust each other, because it does feel like we are also going through a trust crisis where it's very hard for us to know which information to go to, who to go to, in order to know how to have a clearer image of what's happening. So I think having faith that things are going to work out and trying and betting on the best is very important for all of us. So that's what I would like to convey.
Thank you. Thank you. In this show we have this game called Parallel Universe. So basically it's a game where we flip the cards of your life, and so we try to imagine a new reality. And so for that we have 3 questions for you. Are you ready?
Yes.
What if Kawtar were not a woman, but a man? What would be the first thing you would do that you have never done before in a city?
I would try to be an investor.
What does it mean?
It's because the statistics show that there's a huge gap in women and men in raising funds, if I'm not mistaken, and there's like a huge disparity that has to do with gender equality in that regards. And it's like, oh, a lot of men are in positions of power, but they don't necessarily deserve it. It's just because of some kind of unearned privilege, which is being a man. So I'd be like, okay, let me try that and see how it goes.
So it could be easier. Okay, fair enough. Second question. What if Kawtar were not Miss Universe Morocco, but just an ordinary, unknown person? What would she do to make her voice heard and express herself?
I think in a lot of ways I am both Miss Morocco and an ordinary person living on this planet. So I'm still very much finding different ways and exploring different ways constantly of using my voice and creating community in that way. And I think we're very fortunate to live in a world today where we have access to platforms that can allow us to share our voices. So having Instagram being like a tool where a lot of us are a part of, I think it's really great how, yes, through this individual media kind of medium, we can all share our voices as much as possible. We have this freedom of speech. Then I think it's also important to have a sense of responsibility when using our voices. So
you wouldn't change anything?
I would not change anything for now, I would say.
Okay, interesting. Last one. What if Kawtar were to make her first film? In which city would you shoot it?
I love this question. I would shoot it in Marrakech.
Okay.
Yeah, where I grew up.
Back to the roots.
Back to the roots, yes. There's so much beauty in Marrakech. I find it to be such a mystical city and so enchanting in a lot of ways. So I would shoot it in Marrakech, and it would be a story about Moroccan people.
Okay. To close this episode, we have one specific question in this show. It's about the perfect city.
The perfect city.
You ready?
Who?
in one word only, how would you describe the perfect city?
Responsible.
Responsible. How?
A city that has responsibility at the core of its values. So being responsible in the ways that it builds, its infrastructure, being responsible about the way that different communities are made and the educational system is made and how people interact with each other, and yes, responsible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Kawtar, before leaving you, you still need to ask a question for the next guests. So thank you for watching this episode. It was Kawtar Benhalima. Thank you at Instinct Urbain.
Thank you for having me.
And so basically, like, it's supposed to be a question about today's topic. So maybe women. And you don't know who the next guest is going to be.
I like that so much. Okay.